So again, thanks guys for taking the time to chat. I wanted to quickly go around the room or the Zoom room and talk to each of you really quickly. Do you want to quickly introduce yourselves? I guess starting with Tahmina, and then we'll go on from there.
Sure. My name is TEHMINA BEG, and I'm a visual effects supervisor for the Molecule, which is now also Crafty Apes.
Awesome. I love that. Thanks, Tahmina. And what about you, Maggie?
Hi, I'm Maggie Oh. I'm currently a senior technical program manager for machine learning and computer vision on Google's Project Starline.
Awesome. And Aaron, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Aaron Ramos. I'm head of effects animation at Walt Disney Animation Studios.
Cool. Thank you. And Connie, lucky last.
Okay, I'm Connie Sue, and I'm the virtual production producer at Eyeline Studios, which is now part of Netflix.
Awesome. I love that. And I thought I'd just go around the room really quickly and just ask a few of you a bit more kind of laser focused questions, but then from there we'll go more broad. And I thought I'd just start with Tahmina. I thought just kind of diving in a little bit into your background, especially how it relates to women in the industry as well. I'm kind of curious for you, like you've worked on a lot of really big projects. A lot of them have been more women-centric stories like Homeland, Quantifco, Blacklist, just like that. And obviously, I'm going to maybe say this wrong, but rap shit from Isa Rae. I'm kind of curious for you, like how do you typically pick the projects that you want to work on?
Honestly, these projects are given to me through the companies that I work for. So when I was at Zoic, they just kind of threw me on Homeland, threw me on Quantico, whatever was shooting in New York. That's usually what I ended up with. So yeah, I mean, that's how it's been. And then in more recent years, it's been, I'll know somebody on a project and they'll come back. But yeah, that's usually how it goes.
What advice would you give to young women just starting out in your industry?
My advice would just be go for it. Just don't be intimidated. If you're intimidated by how many guys there are in the room, just forget it. Just go. And just keep working hard and just do your best and be as good as you possibly can be. And I feel like that pays off.
Hell yeah.
Always.
I love that. Thank you. And Maggie, what about you? Like, what are your thoughts?
So definitely, if you're interested in entering the industry, apply to a whole bunch of places because applying is free. So it's just your time spent. And in some ways it is a numbers game where it's like, you just have to try a whole bunch of different places. But I would also recommend that you find a role model and find a mentor so that you can work off of the work of others. So if someone is a trailblazer and you're like, wow, I really, really admire what they've done, pick their brain. Like, how did they get to where they are? And what kind of struggles and advice do they have that is like similar to your career path, maybe some choices that you have to go through, and just have that active conversation.
That's awesome. Thank you, Maggie. And Aaron, do you want to chime in?
What I think is great about people who are starting out now is that there are just so many more resources out there than there were 20 years ago when I was, first starting out. And just similar to what Maggie said, I think it's like people are so much more accessible now, like just by way of, social media or LinkedIn or something. And don't be afraid to reach out to people, to ask them questions and, like I said, just sort of like find a mentor. But yeah, I mean, just like as far as like the information out there that you can learn just from a Google search, as far as like what you can do in visual effects, like just absorb as much as you can, and ask a lot of questions, be curious, and also just like stay authentic. And it is kind of a boys' club, and we're changing that slowly, but you don't have to like change who you are just to try to like run with the boys per se. And there are going to be challenges out there, but just work hard. Ultimately your work's going to speak for itself. So yeah.
That's great. And Connie, is there anything you want to add?
I think one of the things that I did grow up with is studying art was that this idea that you're not going to be able to make a living, you're not going to be financially stable or secure. And I think it took me a long time to kind of get that, to realize that I also somehow, hearing all of that, I was carrying that in my subconscious somewhere. Like, I have to choose between doing something creative that I love and having a job that makes money, and that I have to give something up. And I think at some point I was like, why? That's not true. That's not true. And it took me a little bit to kind of, throughout my career, at some point I was like, that's not true. And I think people should know that. Like, if you have a passion for something and you do it and you do it to the best of your ability, you can be successful, you can be financially successful, and you can make it. And I think that's one of the things that I would like people, especially young people, especially women, to know. Like, you don't have to choose. You can do what you want to do. You can have your passion and you can make a living and you can have your family, and you don't have to like make these choices, because the reality is men don't make those choices. They go for what they want. They have their family, they have their, and women can do that as well. And also with being creative, you don't have to choose between creativity and that passion and then and financial security. Like, they can go hand in hand.
So one thing you actually triggered something I wanted to say, Connie, but like, I remember reading some stats saying that like women are less likely to apply for jobs if they don't fit every single one of the qualifications on the job description. You know what? Like, if you fit half of them, but you think you can do the work, seriously, like, men are more likely to apply for things that they're not. Oh, it's like there's oftentimes like, oh, I only have 2 years experience and they want 5. I'm like, you know what? Like, if your reel is solid, we'll look at it. So
I think that's really good advice, because like, it's funny, Aaron, that you brought that up, because that's actually the example I was going to use here, and it's probably the most common thing that I get is, how do I get a job when every job says experience required? And really, a lot of the time, it's a filter for yourself. If you think you're good enough, then you're good enough. Like, it's more the fact that a lot of the times they're going to say, we want to filter out the 80% and the 20%, whether they tick all the boxes or whether they don't. But they say, well, I've been doing this long enough, I think I can do the job. That's the qualifier. It isn't about whether or not you fit what's on paper. It's just about saying, well, if you just started out in 3D last week and you're applying at ILM, then this message is for you. But for everybody else, like, it's kind of what you guys said before about, you can't do what you can't see. The more that you see everyone else making money, having a stable career, doing all these things, it makes you realize, like, well, I can do that. Like, why can't I not do that? I think if anything, you got to be in it to win it. You got to try something. Worst that's going to happen is you got to try again a year later or 3 months later. So, again, like, what's the worst that can happen from you applying a little bit too early? So I love that.
You get the job.
That's right. I think it's one of those things that a lot of times, like, someone might say, well, I'm going to go and study or work as, somewhere I don't want to work for a bunch of years to get experience, instead of going for what you really want. When you feel like this is something I really want, like, why not go for it? Because most of the time, the worst that happens in a lot of ways is you actually get the job 6 months or 10 years later, and you look back and you realize, like, I could have actually done that right away. I just had these, whether excuses or just a false narrative. And a lot of times it's just like, you're just skipping the queue. You're getting in there and doing what you want immediately, versus having to wait a longer time because you felt like, well, I got to get more experience, education, whatever it might be. So pulling the trigger a lot earlier.
And I think sometimes people get in jobs and it's more than they expect it's going to be, and it's difficult. But I would say just stick with it sometimes and learn as much as you can, even though you might think, oh, this isn't the right fit for me or whatever, because later down the line, and you look back, you realize, like, oh, I learned all these things at that job, and now I can use that because now I have all this experience. It's always beneficial. So I think even sometimes when there's a tough job and you're facing challenges, like, just, grab the horns and ride the bull and just learn as much as you can.
And if you guys want to share any links of where we can find out more information about all of you, and I'll start with TEHMINA, but in addition to that, like any other resources, especially related to what we're talking about today, feel free to share those as well. Because I know, I think it was Aaron, I think it was Aaron that mentioned Rise earlier. TEHMINA, where can we go to find out more about you? And again, any other resources you want to share as well?
Well, probably my IMDb. But I did a talk at a school. I did a talk, actually for SVA students like a couple of years back. And cool. I feel like I gave like a bullet point list of what you should do if you're a student just starting out. I kind of felt like that was like a good bullet point list. I should have brought that to this. But that was good for, resource for students and to hear a little more about my background. As far as resources go, I know not everybody is in New York, but there's the Post Alliance of New York, which is an organization I'm part of and lots of people in my field are part of. I really like that organization because it's everybody in post, everybody from like audio to color to VFX to editing. And they have a ton of networking programs. They're all on Slack and they have presentations every week. It's great. And they're a great group. And then, of course, there's also the Visual Effects Society, which I was on the board the last few years. A couple tough years to be on the board for the New York board. VES has been, we've got a bunch of new board members in New York and, they are planning a bunch of networking events and really trying to start things back up again. So I would say those two resources are pretty great.
And Maggie, what about you? Like, where can people go to find out more about you? And also, again, like any other resources you want to share, things like that, let me know and I'll add them to the show notes.
I kind of feel like my details are all over the place, but not really aggregated in one place. So for example, my IMDb page, I think, ends when I left the games industry. So, gosh, 7 years ago, maybe. Yeah, so let's see. IMDb is not terribly updated. My LinkedIn is updated. And then in terms of resources, so, being an MIT alum, I donate back to like tons of MIT causes. And one of them is OpenCourseWare, which actually it's a free resource. Like anyone can log into the website and it's basically got all the problem sets and lecture notes from all of the classes, undergrad classes at MIT. Some of them are a little bit outdated. But yeah, it was kind of surprising to find my old finals like posted up. It's like, oh, wow, ooh, wait. I remember that was a really tough final. But that's a great kind of resource for, if you're curious about engineering, computer science, electrical engineering, all the way to like architecture, the mixed media like arts and sciences degree program. It's a great resource. I'm part of the board of directors at Visual Effects Society, and we do have a lot of initiatives going on between, working from home, mentorship, internships, trying to, connect companies to find, resume workshops, stuff like that. So a lot of the local chapters will also have very, analogous programs and initiatives as well. So keep a lookout for those. And if there are any opportunities to volunteer for places, so Visual Effects Society, we do have a volunteer program. Usually alumni offices of your universities will have volunteering opportunities as well to give back to students who are entering the workforce. But also, societies like ACM SIGGRAPH, Game Developers Conference will have volunteering opportunities as well.
That's great. Awesome, Maggie. Thank you. And Aaron, where can people go to find out more about you? And again, any other resources you want to share?
Like everybody, IMDb, LinkedIn, those are the two places you can Google me, I guess. Nothing will pop up. But yeah, this is the one I mentioned before, Rise Up Animation. You can find them under riseupanimation.org. And that's a really cool like mentor-mentee program that they started, and they do reel reviews, like free reel reviews and portfolio reviews for for students and whatnot, and other artists trying to break into the industry. And there's also Women in Animation. That's another resource.
Thank you for that. And again, I'll make sure to link to everything in the show notes. And Connie, where can people go to find out more about you? And of course, your short film, Jeffrey, and any other resources you want to share?
Our YouTube channel. And you can see behind the scenes there. You can see interviews with all the heads of department, and then also some clips of the film. And so that's on our YouTube channel. And then you can find out more about me and specifically on IMDb, and then and my Instagram page. And then as far as resources, I'm part of Women in Media. There's an organization here, and they have a great camaraderie program where they actually shoot short films. And so if you want to take on a role or you want to learn a new role, you can volunteer for that. And I've also hired a number of people from that organization. So that's a great organization to be part of. Yeah, and then also SIGGRAPH and VES. So